Hey everybody, this is Matt. Thank you for joining me and welcome back to the channel as we're on our 8th episode of trying to get this Santa Claus done. If you haven't had a chance to look back on the previous episodes, I would encourage you to do so to help to figure out how we get here. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and jump right in it. We're going to be finishing up with this episode. Finally, this has been a really long project, and it's been a lot of work and a lot of learning for sure. And my wife has decided that she wants to help me with some of this, which is why you see another set of arms. And she's trying to tell me how I need to do it. Oh no, she's working on his rosy cheeks. But we've come a long way. We've got a previous episode where we painted, and we've got 6 other episodes of carving. So if you're interested to figure out how we got here, I definitely would encourage you to watch those previous episodes. It helps you catch up with us here. So what we're doing is we're trying to come back again, like I'd mentioned in the previous episode, where we did the initial painting. I try and do the light colored painting at first. I started with his face, but then I just happened to remember that I needed to come back and get his little ball on the back of his hat. And I actually tried to do something a little bit nifty, and it ends up working out. I got a little bit of white paint down in Santa Claus's eyes. You remember how we created little gaps between his eyelids? I've got just a little bit of white paint in between his eyelids now, and so we're going to try and work on his eyes as well to make them see how they turn out. Inside of his sleeve right there, you can see that he's got a little bit of bare skin. That's just kind of how the carving turned out on him with that arm. So what I'm doing here, it's probably difficult to see. I've taken a darker shade of red, and I'm trying to blend it in with the rest of his different areas, like so in the areas beneath of his arms, where his belt kind of comes together. I'm trying to add a little bit darker shade of red, so it just kind of makes his robe look like it's not just a cartoon robe. Makes it kind of look as if he's actually wearing a piece of cloth, by adding just a little bit extra depth to his the coloration of it. You can kind of see whenever I'm not dragging it off of the camera, that you can kind of see that there's certain areas that are darker than others on the painting. I had originally thought that I might come back and try and add some lighter shades, but I liked having the deep red of his robe. I'm going to end up doing his belt, or his sash, I guess you could say. It's going to end up being black, some kind of a black leather, I guess. But we'll get to that here in just a little bit, I think. Okay, so we're about to start working on his bag, or his toy sack. And Jessica's wanting to help me again. She's sitting over there painting her fingernails while I'm painting Santa Claus. She doesn't want to do any of the detail work. She says that she's worried she'll mess it up. But good thing about painting is if you screw it up, it's pretty easy to come back and fix it. You just gotta layer it over. I hope that you guys have learned a lot during this series. It's been a huge learning experience for me. Like I said on the onset, I don't really do a whole lot of carving in basswood, so every time I pick a piece of basswood up, it's a learning experience for me. So what I'm using, I've just got some, I think it's burnt umber, maybe. It's just a sort of like a reddish brown, and I'm just going over his bag with it. Just being extra careful around his hair. Oh, there's little Bella. So, I can't remember. Yeah, here we go. I've picked up a different brush. I'm trying to get down in the bag to get all the color. I'm actually painting really heavy right now, so to get into all those different cracks I've found, and you guys may already know this, but whenever you're trying to fill in cracks, it's just easier to fill in a crack with color whenever your brush is just really heavily loaded. And I think I'm adding a little bit of darker shades to that as well. That's what you saw. So what I try and do here is I hit it with a piece of black paint, trying to get his pupils set up. Well, my wife, who turns out is a genius, has another idea. She finds a toothpick, sort of a toothpick thing, and she uses it to put the dots of the eyes in there. And so she ends up coming back and fixing my mistake. So in this case, it's definitely helpful to have a second pair of eyes, or a second brain, because I had no idea how I was going to end up doing his eyes, and they end up working out really well thanks to my wife. And her idea works out so well that I actually use that same toothpick to try and do a lot of the detail work on his belt, because since his belt kind of creates like a depression against his robe, it's really hard to get a brush in there on his belt without making a mess. So I end up using that toothpick to get the detail around the belt. Now she's coming back because there was a little bit too much paint on one of his eyes, colored paint, so she's coming back and just touching it up with a little bit of white. So now you can kind of see that his eyes actually look kind of like eyes. So that turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Pays to have a wife smarter than you. So we're still just kind of, what I'm doing is I'm just dipping this this toothpick. It's not really a toothpick. It's actually I think that what this is it's a blender for pencils. I like to do a lot of pencil drawing, and it's a blender for a pencil. I remember that now. So I'm just using the pointy end, and I'm just getting between just kind of adding the detail in that way. So I'm coming back and fixing some of the black marks that I had on around his belt. Alright, so here's the next day. This is tonight, actually. So I'm gonna work on his gloves. This first glove that I do is nowhere near dark enough. And so after I finish it up, I'm going to end up coming back over it with a really dark shade. And you'll see me do that whenever I switch over to the other one. I just decide that I don't like that color, so I'm going to do it a little bit darker. See, that's the great thing about painting, is that if you don't like it, just paint over it. It's really nice. I mean, if you're carving on something and you carve too deep or something like that, it can be a little bit more difficult to come back over it and fix it. But painting's a little bit more forgiving. So I'm definitely not the best painter by any means. But I try and do what I can, and it's pretty tough for me because it takes a lot of patience. Of course, I guess wood carving to some degree takes a lot of patience as well. So I guess it's really what you're interested in. I guess I'm just not as interested in the painting aspects as some people might be. So my biggest fan, by the way, had a great suggestion. On the previous video, my mom made a comment about a way to add a little bit of extra, I guess she called it depth, and it really does. It really makes the painting pop, and you guys will see that here in just a moment. My mother had an idea. Well, after I finished detailing the back of the belt, my mother had a great idea that take some gold paint, really dry brush. Like once you get the paint on the brush, just really dry it out really well on a piece of paper towel, and spread that over your carving, and it'll make it. It ends up making it look like almost like a. How would you say it? It almost makes him look like he has magic gold flakes on him. What I'm doing now is I'm actually coming back in his beard, and I'm adding a little bit of gray to his beard. So that's what you see there. Kind of makes him look like a little bit of an older man instead of just a old white fleshed out beard. And so now what you're going to see is me come back with this gold. It just so happened that my wife had a gold paint that had like little glitter in it. If you can find this kind of paint, this works absolutely perfect. And what I'm doing is I just get the brush real dry, and I'm just spreading it just very, very thin. I mean, you can't even really see it on the paint. I'm just spreading it all over, and that adds a little bit of extra, and you can't even see it. I'm really apologize for this. But it just adds a little bit of like almost like a magical effect to him. So that was a great thing. Oh, and what I'm doing here, I got a little bit of paint on his walking stick. I want to keep the color, the natural look. So I'm just coming back. I'm just going to shave that stuff off. And then what we have now is the finished product. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I have. It's been a blast. And I'm kind of sad to see this project finished, but also it's kind of nice to be done because it's very rewarding to complete a project like this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and tune in next time. I'm going to try and figure out what we're going to work on next. Thanks, guys.